This podcast may contain explicit language. Be careful how you're driving. City Lights is next. Welcome to the Greatest Movie of All Time podcast, the show that uses a unique rating style to redefine what the greatest movies are. I'm Tom Duncan.
And I'm Dana Duncan.
And tonight for our 296th episode, we discuss the silent romantic film classic City Lights from 1931, celebrating its 95th anniversary. Written and directed by Charlie Chaplin, cinematography by Roland Tetherow and Gordon Pollack. Music by Arthur Johnson and Alfred Newman. Editing by Charlie Chaplin and Willard Nico. Starring, of course, Charlie Chaplin as the Tramp, or his famous character, the Tramp. And Virginia Cherrill as the blind girl. Florence Lee as her grandmother. Harry Myers as the eccentric millionaire. Al Ernest Garcia as his butler. And Hank Mann as the prizefighter. Quick background for the movie. City Lights premiered on January 30th, 1931, making this the 95th anniversary. On an estimated budget of $1.5 million, the film grossed roughly $4.25 million to finish 17th at the domestic box office for 1931. City Lights was widely acclaimed by critics at the time, with most praising Chaplin. In the years since its release, City Lights has become widely known as Chaplin's best and greatest work. In 1952, Sight and Sound magazine revealed the results of its first poll of the best films of all time. City Lights was voted number 2 after Vittorio De Sica's Bicycle Thieves. In 2002, City Lights ranked 45th on the critics list. That same year, directors were polled separately and ranked the film as 19th overall. The Village Voice ranked the film at number 37 on its top 250 best films of the century list in 1999. The film was included in Time's all-time 100 best movies list in 2005. In 2006, Premiere issued its list of the 100 greatest performances of all time, putting Chaplin's performance as the Tramp at number 44. Although that doesn't generically just cover this movie, since that character exists across all of his movies. City Lights was ranked 17th on Cahiers du Cinema's 100 greatest films. In the 2012 Sight and Sound polls, it was ranked 50th by the critics and 30th in the director's poll. The film was voted at number 21 on the list of the 100 greatest comedies of all time by a poll of 253 film critics from 52 countries conducted by the BBC in 2017. In 2021, the film ranked 16th on Time Out magazine's list of the 100 best movies of all time. It has been recognized by the AFI on the following lists: 100 Years, 100 Movies at number 76, 100 Years, 100 Laughs at number 38, 100 Years, 100 Passions at number 10, 100 Years, 100 Heroes and Villains with the Tramp as the number 38 hero, 100 Years, 100 American Movie Poster Classics at number 52, 100 Years, 100 Cheers at number 33, and 100 Years, 100 Movies 10th Anniversary Edition at number 11. Quite a climb from 76 to 11 in 10 years. It was also recognized on AFI's 10 Top 10 list as the number 1 romantic comedy film of all time. In 1991, the third time the Library of Congress made selections for their National Film Registry, City Lights was inducted. City Lights currently holds a 95% among critics on Rotten Tomatoes, a 99 score on Metacritic, and a 4.3 out of 5 on Letterboxd. Now, ordinarily, we'd introduce our guest for the evening, but unfortunately, our scheduled guest, Ryan Luis Rodriguez, has had a bit of oral surgery and could not make it this evening. So instead, we are just planning this one solo, which is a rare, I guess, feat, treat, one of those eat words.
Yeah. So you could always run the applause for me once.
Oh, sure. We can do that, Dad.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Did that help?
Yes.
I'm glad to do that for you. All right. So, City Lights. This is a film that I saw for the first time during COVID. It was one of those, okay, let me take it into this and maybe go a little bit deeper than I otherwise would because we don't have a guest and I'm going to vamp it a little bit for a second here. But when COVID first started, and I very distinctly remember this, I was listening to an episode of the Bill Simmons podcast, and at the time, why am I drawing a blank on his name? The former co-host for Scott Van Pelt, Ryan Russillo.
Right, yeah.
And Ryan Russillo was on for that episode, and he said something to the effect of, if you have any personal project that you've ever wanted to work on in your life, you need to finish that screenplay, you need to complete some list of something, you need to write that book, whatever personal project, this is the time to do it because you can't go outside. You can barely talk to anybody. It's either over the internet or it's nothing. And you're going to have probably 6 months of just time to yourself to complete something. So I finished a couple of projects that I was working on during that time period. I finished the pilot script that I was writing at the time. And I also went and set out to finish all of the remaining Best Picture winners that I hadn't seen, as well as the AFI Top 100 films on both the 1998 and 2007 list. Now, I didn't accomplish that until probably, I think 2022 was somewhere in that range because it took me a while to find a bunch of them, and I didn't have access to everything. I think the last Best Picture winner I finished was 1929, so the second year, The Broadway Melody. Well, if you've seen it, you know why that's kind of goofy. Yeah. And I think the final one I crossed off the list for the AFI was The Birth of a Nation, because I saved that for last. Because I'm a masochist, apparently.
You didn't watch the 12-hour version, right?
No. I watched the 4-hour version, and that was plenty.
Yeah, Woodrow Wilson had the 12-hour version. He'd watch it in loop.
Yeah, one of our most racist presidents. But anyway, I digress. So during COVID, I think I distinctly remember watching, and I really hadn't watched much Chaplin up to that point. I remember watching this, I remember watching Modern Times, and I remember watching The Gold Rush, which I think all three were on the list somewhere. I also remember watching The General. And I've been somewhat of a critical person of a lot of silent films. They don't appeal to me that much. Out of those four, Modern Times and The General were the only two that I really cared for. And we're going to be talking about Modern Times here in just a few weeks, I think. Mm-hmm. Near the end of February, if I recall. And I think Kieran's supposed to be on for us with that episode. But this was one that I guess I didn't get why people thought this was so great. I'm glad that I've come to a second watch. I've come around on it a little bit. I've moderated some of my stances. For being not even a full 90 minutes, it covers actually a lot of ground. I just wish that instead of being silent, that it had a little bit of dialogue, especially because they did use sound effects in the film. So it wasn't like it was completely devoid of sound, but there are some elements where I think a dialogue could have aided in a few spots. So what is your relationship with the movie?
I saw it for the first time about 4 years ago, and I don't remember why. I just decided I should watch it, so I watched it. Actually, I appreciated it. I came to the conclusion because I had seen I'd seen Modern Times, I'd seen Gold Rush, and so I'm watching this, and I thought it was Chaplin's best. I thought it was a very sweet story overall, and ultimately, love is blind.
I suppose that is true in this particular case. Are you a fan of Chaplin?
Originally, I would say not. I've come to appreciate his work more because it's not like he had a whole lot to mirror. I mean, you talk about or listen to other directors, and they all were influenced by somebody. Who did Chaplin have to be influenced by? So a lot of his stuff was pretty pretty original coming out of his own head. So to that extent, I have a new appreciation for him. At some point, I'm going to go back and watch Gold Rush and Modern Times again.
Well, you'll have to watch Modern Times in a few weeks.
Yeah, I guess I will. Just to see what I think of him now in light of that.
And I know we did The Great Dictator a few years ago on the show. That obviously is a dialogue movie, so it has that capability. It's one of the few Chaplin films that it can be recognized as such. Obviously, I think he's known primarily as a silent film star that continued into the talkie era, this film included, which we'll get to kind of some of the discussion around, I guess, the risk he took by continuing to make a silent film in the talking picture era. But I guess part of my question is this guy, more than anybody else, seems to have been the one that lasted, that has name recognition, that has a look and a caricature and a brand that lived far beyond his era. Whereas, and I know that you were a fan kind of growing up of Harold Lloyd. I personally liked The General a little bit more than some of these Chaplin movies, so Buster Keaton made a lot more sense for me. I guess, why does Chaplin seem to be the one that survived, and why are his films the ones that resonate so much with the public and with critics comparative to some of the others?
I think in part Chaplin's, the creation of the caricature, the little tramp, was so memorable because it was such a unique character. I think Chaplin kind of was at the forefront a lot of times in the development of comedy in silent film. And while the others were, I don't think he had quite the overall popularity that Chaplin had. I mean, I like Harold Lloyd because I happen to watch Harold Lloyd's films when they used to have a silent movie of the week on, like, I can't remember where it was. It was on a station, I want to say, when I was a kid out of Rockford on Sunday nights and summers. I would stay up and watch these at 10:30, 11 o'clock on Sunday night. And so I watched Harold Lloyd and whatever.
The idea of having Sunday, or was it Sunday night or Saturday night?
Sunday night.
Sunday night put you to sleep films like these.
Well, I probably was 11, 12, 13, something like that, and started watching them because, yes, I was a nerd.
That's been well established, yes.
Yeah. So Harold Lloyd continued on in talkies. Buster Keaton made a resurgence later on in his career, and then later on his life, in the 50s, I think, early 60s. And I think the other part of it is Chaplin just stopped. After the Great Dictator, he fled the country. He was being pursued by the U.S. government for various things. Ultimately, it was income tax evasion. And so he was not allowed back into the U.S. for quite a while. I think the first time they finally pardoned him, and that allowed him to come back and get his Lifetime Achievement Award from the Academy in the early 70s, not long before he passed. So
I was going to say, I thought he made another film at least in I know he made one in the 50s, and I'm pretty sure he made another one in the 70s somewhere.
I mean, I don't think they were really that popular or well shown in the United States. He was living in France by that time, so I wonder if these were more popular in Europe than they were in the United States.
I don't know. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head what the names of them would be. But yes, a lot of his most celebrated work is from the 20s and 30s. So do you have a plot summary ready for us here?
I do. City Lights, written, directed by, and starring Charlie Chaplin, is a silent romantic comedy about a kind-hearted tramp who falls in love with a blind flower girl. When she mistakes him for a wealthy man, the tramp goes to great lengths to help her, including befriending a troubled millionaire who only recognizes him when he's drunk. As the tramp struggles with poverty and bad luck, his love for the flower girl pushes him toward quiet acts of sacrifice. The film blends slapstick humor with deep emotion, building to a famous final scene that reveals the tramp's true identity and captures Chaplin's belief in compassion, dignity, and human connection.
Thank you. So what is the film about?
Empathy, love, compassion, sacrifice.
I don't really have any disagreements there. I guess in a thematic summation, those would all fit. I'm trying to think if the film is really more grandiose than that. I guess the biggest thing from a plot devising to me, and this is maybe something I guess as I watched this now the second time ever, I started to think through this. A lot of silent films were just basically like almost television is now. It's a series of vignettes where you're set in one location and then something happens and then that's over, and that it's like a small act to itself. Much like the boxing match just kind of feels like it's dropped in the middle of this story. It technically fits the overall narrative and the arc of everything that's going on, but it's not really related to anything else per se. And so I guess the film in its structure doesn't appeal to me as much, even though I very much enjoyed the boxing match this time around. But not being able to connect some of those dots makes it a little bit harder for me to see what the through line is, or the thematic through line is on a lot of pieces of this, because it is a little bit splintered. And it is very slapsticky in its essence, because it kind of has to be. That's what silent film comedy really was.
Yes. I guess I understand your point, but each one of these subplots is the extent by which he's willing to go to effectuate help for the flower girl. I mean, even the boxing match is ultimately because he's trying to earn the money to help her with her rent and her surgery.
Sure. And like that fits in the overall narrative, but he's not trying to do that until like much later. Him waking up on the statue has nothing really to do with the flower girl. It's just a interesting way to introduce the character. And then him with the eccentric millionaire and saving him in the harbor from his own potential suicide. Yes, it obviously ties back later, but it doesn't exactly mesh with the romantic side portion of this movie. It's like a film of two halves. You have this whole plot line with the eccentric billionaire, and then you have this whole romantic plot line. And somehow they generally overlap, but do they?
They overlap to the extent that up until he meets the flower girl, he really doesn't have any real meaning or purpose or reason about his life. And then once that happens, everything else revolves around that central concept.
So, did you know Charlie Chaplin's penchant for perfection carried over into all aspects of the production? He had a very clear vision as to how every scene should play. Robert Parrish, who had a small part as one of the newsboys who pelt the tramp with pea shooters, remembered in 1991, quote, "Chaplin was a dervish. He would blow a pea from the pea shooter, playing both my part and the part of Austin Jewell, the other newsboy. He then would run over and react as the tramp being hit by it, then back to the newsboys and blow another pea. He would then play Virginia Cheryl's part of the blind girl. Then he was the tramp. Then he would instruct what the background people should be doing. Everyone watched as he acted out all the parts for us. When he felt he had worked it all out, he reluctantly gave us back our parts. I believe he would have much rather played them all himself if he could have."
Yeah.
Definition of a one-man show.
Yes.
Did you know Chaplin reshot the scene in which the little tramp buys a flower from the blind flower girl 342 times, as he could not find a satisfactory way of showing that she thought the mute tramp was wealthy. I mean, we talk about Kubrick and we talk about Fincher, but this is obsession.
Yeah, as opposed to Eastwood cut print.
Yeah. You sure we can't do another? Why? What was wrong with it?
Do you want to waste everybody's time? Yeah.
Did you know? Chaplin's personal favorite film of all of his films. Orson Welles said that this was his favorite movie of all time. Stanley Kubrick named it as one of his favorite films. Russian director Andrei Tarkovsky cited this as his favorite film. And, wait for it, Woody Allen also calls it Chaplin's best picture. I think it has at least a good tier of recognition among the greats.
I read that Woody Allen based The Last Scene in Manhattan on The Last Scene in City Lights.
Could be. I haven't seen Manhattan, so I can't say for sure.
Yeah.
Did you know? Chaplin had interviewed several actresses to play the blind flower girl, but was unimpressed with them all. While seeing a film shoot with bathing women in a Santa Monica beach, he found a casual acquaintance, Virginia Cheryl. She waved and asked him if she would ever get the chance to work with him. After a series of poor auditions from other actresses, Chaplin eventually invited her to do a screen test. She was the first actress to subtly and convincingly act blind on camera due to her nearsightedness.
Yes. Did you know who she ultimately married a couple years afterwards?
Why would I know that?
Cary Grant. It was Cary Grant's first wife.
First wife.
First wife.
I see.
So, yes.
Why is that ultimately not surprising? Because he is Roger O. Thornhill?
I don't know if he had another one in between her and Diane. Why am I drawing a blank?
Because you're 63 years old.
Diane Cannon. That was the mother of his daughter, his only offspring.
Did you know? The film was inordinately expensive, in excess of $1.5 million, mainly because Chaplin kept his cast and crew on standby for 22 months, even though he actually only shot for 179 days. But it was one of Chaplin's most financially successful and critically acclaimed films, despite being released well into the sound era. Apparently, he took a major risk on this because when he showed it for a test audience, they all hated it. And so he had to re-debut it or re-premiere the film, and somehow it still became a success. So, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, that looks like a good spot for our first break. We'll be right back. All right. In our normal commercial break, and we certainly didn't want to project anything onto any of our guests or anything else. This is just a message from the two of us that we felt was important to use our voice and our platform in this particular way. And we're sorry if this is too serious of a moment for some people, but we felt we needed to say something. What is currently going on in the geopolitical situation of our country is horrifying, terrifying. It emotionally makes me numbed sometimes. I have steeled away in myself an inability to react to such horrible situations. It seemingly was with every mass shooting, every school shooting, that I just cannot will myself to be emotional about them anymore because they happen too frequently. But yesterday and the most recent, I'll call it for a spade, execution of an American citizen by its government has me irate, terrified, broken, and I'm not sure what to do with all of this. But to stay mute, I don't think is a choice anymore for any of us. It is at our doorstep, whether you like it or not. And you're going to have to choose which side you're on. I don't even think this is a politics issue anymore. Some people will. That's fine. This message is not necessarily for you. But if you're a casual participant, if you only occasionally vote or you only vote in presidential elections, if you're just a citizen who pays taxes and is interested in the future of this country, you will likely have a moment in the next 3 years yet, while we're still remaining in this administration, provided that we allow free and fair elections to continue at that point, which I don't think is a given. You will have to make a choice of what you're willing to sacrifice or put on the line for yourselves. Right now, this message, and from all the reporting around the federal government and what ICE is doing right now with social media and with facial recognition and all the other stuff that we talk about in sci-fi movies of your government coming to get you, very Orwellian stuff, is supposedly happening. And by putting this out on video and in our show, we're making ourselves, frankly, targets, but this is a sacrifice I'm willing to make. I don't think I can stay silent anymore. And for my own sake, I'm opposed to what's going on with ICE. I'm opposed to this administration and their lawless endeavors against citizens and the rest. It is not what I believe this country should be. I've made that very clear through my vote, but I am clearly going to have to go further. And this is one way that I'm going to start doing so, is speaking publicly about it here and saying that enough is enough. Whether that's going to be through public protest or any other sort of things, it is incumbent upon me, who doesn't have kids or a significant other or somebody that I'm responsible to put myself on the line and say, you shall go no further, because people should not be getting gunned down in the streets.
I've spent my entire life, well, at least my professional life, in the law. And I am a firm believer. I did criminal defense work, and I often commented that, did I represent guilty people? Maybe, I don't know. Sometimes I didn't, sometimes I did, whatever. The law was set up that if I did my job, the prosecutor did his or her job, the judge did his or her job, and the jury did theirs. Ultimately, the right outcome would prevail. Okay? So I lived an era of, or a career of 37 years of living by that mantra that the law is what is established to prevail. We're living in a period right now of lawlessness, when they can quash an investigation as to wrongdoing for purely political reasons. It has gone too far. If you have a belief, if you are, and I'll put it this term because right now they're the ones that are causing the most problems, a Christian faith. Okay, Jesus said multiple times that you have to welcome the foreigner, the person from outside. This is not following Jesus's teachings. Jesus taught, love your neighbor. This is not that. Yes, you have to follow the government and the governmental position when it is something that does not contradict your Christian beliefs. When you can have people gunned down in the streets, basically for exercising their First Amendment rights, which I don't give a shit. I watched the videos. I watched multiple videos, and this is ridiculous. There was nothing about this that can be deemed lawful or self-defense or anything else. This is somebody who should be charged and prosecuted criminally. It is worse than what took place with George Floyd. Clearly. And it's going to be covered up.
If you watch the video, I don't think that this is dispute over the facts. I think the video quite clearly speaks for itself. And this is not a message. If you buy the administration's blatant lies, and I'm not going to sugarcoat that, it is quite clearly lies, then I don't know what to do for you. This message is clearly not for you. We are just expressing how we feel. You do not necessarily have to agree with us. We're trying to expand on where we're coming from and saying that we've chosen our side. And we find this imperative for whomever's listening to this, that you're going to have to probably make a choice for yourself as well. We are not calling for any violent means. Let me make that ultimately clear. Civil disobedience is not violence. Meeting violence with violence only gives into what they are trying to do, is provoke reactions. The reason ICE is there right now is because they want people to respond violently. Please do not. But there are many other ways to civilly disobey your government and cause a reaction. And it's going to need a large majority of us to respond in kind. I can't say that everybody's going to have the same things they're willing to give up or sacrifice, but it's going to take all of us. Because it took all of us to get here, and it's going to take all of us to get out of it.
I really believe that sometimes you have to put yourself at risk in order to effectuate change. And I'm willing to do that. It would be real easy for me as a affluent white male in this country to just sit back and nod and not pay attention and worry about it, because quite frankly, if I don't do anything, I'm going to be fine. But I don't want the result to happen to this country and the future of this country just because I'm going to be okay. I don't think it's right. And I stand by that. I oppose the president in the White House, who's doing a lot of this in order to draw attention away from his criminal activities as a private citizen. And I'm a firm believer in that based upon what I know as far as the evidence and what's been available, and know based on my history in the law as to what the evidence likely shows. I encourage anybody who has any questions or beliefs to think seriously about joining in this effort to oppose what's going on.
Ultimately, I'll end here in our small aside here before we can get you back into our discussion on city lights in the film. When the call came to do something about what you believe in, did you raise your hand? Our declaration is here that we have raised our hands. I have no idea what that means and how we will be called, but we're going to do something. I don't know what that is yet. I don't know in what form. We hope that if this resonates with you, you do something yourself in your small corner of the world. Change does not necessarily happen on a momentous level. It sometimes happens in the smallest of things. And we would encourage you, again, if this resonates with you at all, to make your own choices. Think about what you're willing to put on the line and try and effectuate change in your sphere of influence. And so with that, we'll get back to the film. Before we jump back into the episode, next week for our 297th episode, we welcome in our newest celebrity guest, host and creator of 1001 by 1 and the CLP contributor, Adam St. John, to discuss Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the original one from 1956, celebrating its 70th anniversary. Directed by Don Siegel, written by Daniel Mainwaring, cinematography by Ellsworth Fredericks, music by Carmen Dragon. That's quite a name, man. Like, that exudes power there. Editing by Robert S. Eisen, starring Kevin McCarthy, Dana Winter, Larry Gates, and King Donovan. You won't want to miss that one, so watch ahead of the show by searching the Real Good app to find where it's streaming for you. That's REELGOOD. All right, we left off at Best Performance. What did you have down?
Chaplin.
It's kind of like by default, almost.
Yeah. Most charismatic, Chaplin.
Well, I had Virginia Cheryl for that one. I think she's a good foil in this, and I don't mean in the way like an antagonist or whatever else, but just she seems to play well off of Chaplin. She's somewhat convincing as a blind person in this. So I think that she means well, and she just feels very wholesome and innocent in this role, which you kind of need. So I was, if anything, I was infatuated by her. But all right, so if we don't go for Chaplin, who's the writer, star, director, he also wrote part of the music. He did the editing. I mean, he did just about everything for this movie. When we often default to people who are stars, directors, writers, etc., we don't often go to this level of length for their contributions to a movie. But yes, okay, Chaplin default is the best performance. If it's not Chaplin, who do you go with?
Boy, it's difficult.
You didn't have a best secondary performance?
Well, the secondary performance I had was Virginia Sherrill.
Okay.
That's who I had. But, other than those two, maybe the cinematographers. I mean, it was shot very well. So the aesthetics, the framing looked good.
I mean, I can't fault that. I guess one of the few things that I was really taken with during this version or this watch was the music. So I went with Arthur Johnston and Alfred Newman.
Okay.
I really enjoyed the score at points in this movie. And I think there are, like, the tune itself kind of, I don't know, it sticks in your head. It's kind of an earworm at times, even though it's somewhat very simplistic and plays very much like a silent film score. I don't know, it was engaging. It grew on me, I guess, the more often I watched it. All right, moving to best scene then, and that's probably our shortest best performances section of the last couple of years, but we'll move to best scene. I have 5 nominees here. I have The Harbor, which refers to the scene in where he stops the eccentric billionaire or millionaire or whatever, however much money he has, from throwing himself into the harbor to commit suicide. I have The Celebration Party, which is the two of them while the millionaire's drunk, and him eating the streamer.
Yes.
So then I have the boxing match. I have the robbery, and then I have the flower shop.
Yes.
Did you have any other ones that you'd like to nominate?
I mean, the opening scene was kind of cute and such, but it's not necessary since I didn't nominate it for anything.
That's fair. So what do you feel is the best scene then?
The best scene is the flower shop.
Agreed. It's the most meaningful, the most impactful. It's the one that everything is built into. And frankly, if that scene doesn't land, I don't think the movie is as heralded as it is.
Yeah. So it's not my favorite scene. My favorite scene is the harbor because the choreographed nature of it, falling in, almost falling in, helping each other out, pulling each other in. It just was cute and very Chaplin-esque.
And I think I went for the boxing match for the same reason. I thought that the choreograph with the referee and then the stuff with the bell and everything else that went into it, it's part of the few spots in here that really made me chuckle, if anything. Like, I didn't laugh out loud in any way because my humor or my funny bone is usually reserved to things that are much more acerbic than slapsticky. But in a way, this, I don't know, tickled me when I watched it. Most indelible moment, though, it probably has to be the flower shop.
Correct. I mean, it is by far. It's the most tender. It is almost a tearjerker.
Yeah, it's built on emotion, and it gives you a nice finality to the whole thing. And for a film with very little dialogue, the payoff of the last lines or the last title card really does hit home. So that looks like a good spot for our second break. We'll be right back. Before we jump back into the episode, during the break, Gmo did a few live episodes on our end-of-year recap, Season 8 scheduling, our James Bond ranking series, and our Gmo Duncan family holiday menu extravaganza. If you missed those episodes, don't worry. Your favorite movie family is still available to view on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@GModePodcast. We are planning our next series of live episodes, including our Oscars preview again this year. So stay tuned. However, those are only available on our YouTube channel, so make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any G-Mode episodes. Dad, do we have anyone to remember this week?
Yes. Roger Ehlers, 76, American film director. The Lion King, Open Season, and screenwriter Aladdin. Kiana Underwood, 33, American actress. Little Bill, All That, The 24-Hour Woman. Jeffrey Levy, 67, American filmmaker. SFW, The Key. Marcus Gilbert, 67, British actor. Army of Darkness, The Masks of Death, Rambo 3. Bob Weir, 78, American Hall of Fame musician, Grateful Dead, and songwriter, Sugar Magnolia, and One More Saturday Night. T.K. Carter, 68, American actor. The Thing, Punky Brewster, Runaway Train, The Way Back, Space Jam. Tina Packer, 87, British actress. David Copperfield, Doctor Who, and stage director and co-founder of Shakespeare and Company.
And so we remember these here fondly with a moment of silence in their honor. Thank you. All right, let's move to best funniest lines. I have 3.
I just have the from the first scene where they're just this gravelly sound to imitate the people talking. That's mine.
Okay. I have the Tramp. Be careful how you're driving. I also have the Tramp. Tomorrow the birds will sing. And finally, the last line of the movie that I already mentioned, the Tramp. You can see now. A blind girl. Yes, I can see now. Okay, we can move right to the Stanley rubric.
We really do like the film. It's just,
there's not a whole lot to dissect here.
No.
Especially when we agree on a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
let's move to the Stanley rubric then. Legacy is up first. This is a measure of the legacy of the film approximately 5 years after it came out to today. So roughly the last 90 years, 1936 to today. What is the legacy of this film as shared between 2 separate yet equal groups, the audience and the industry, 5 and 5 points apiece for a total of 10. Would you like to go first or second?
I'll go second.
I think this is a very easy 5 on the industry. I don't know how many more background bona fides I need to read as far as just the list that it has been on, the recognition that it's gotten, the recognition from some of the greats in the industry that it's gotten. That's a 5. Now, of course, like most weeks, our disagreement may or may not come down to the second part of this test, which is always the audience side of it. For me, while I recognize that you're probably going to lean heavily on the fact that I would almost guarantee nobody in the Duncan Disability staff has probably heard of this movie. They maybe know who Charlie Chaplin is by character and reputation, but have never seen a single one of his films. What I'm going to say here is, for an audience perspective, most of the film nerd community, my guess is, has seen parts of this movie, if not a good portion of the film. And so for me, that's a 3. Because I don't lean nearly as heavily on those that are not as film enthusiast invested. Usually a 4 is reserved where like it starts to cross over and the casual audience has seen or heard of it or understands what it is. But this to me is like a cinephiles type of movie. It's got to be on the 1001 movies to see before you die list. It's been on the Sight and Sound polls. It's in the AFI. So people, as a completionist effort, have probably seen this movie among the film community. So with that, I have a 3 and a 5 for an 8.
I'm going to agree with you on the industry. For the public, I'm actually going to go half a point higher.
Interesting.
And for this reason, which is if somebody has seen a Chaplin film, the general gist, it's likely that this is the one. I think it's the most well known. It's the most well preserved. It is the cleanest copy.
No. Wait till you see Modern Times. It's much better looking as far as like the graphics and the restoration and such. Like, and I would also beg to guess that Modern Times might be the one that people have referred to more often. But it's in the running. Like, it's easier to see Modern Times and City Lights than it is to see, depending on which version of the Gold Rush you watch. Because the original 1925 version, for the most part, was lost, and they've found different various pieces and tried to piece it back together. But I think it's 1933 version is the one that most people have seen, which was a recreation.
Okay.
But yeah, so we'll revisit that discussion in a few weeks, but sure. All right. So then the average between the two of us is an 8.25. Moving to impact and significance. This is, like Legacy, a measure of the industry and the audience's perspective on impact and significance. But instead of after the 5 years, this is having to deal with the initial 5 years. So 1931 to roughly 1936. What is the impact and significance as shared between those two groups? 5 and 5 points apiece for a total of 10. Would you like to lead off here since I did the last time?
That's fine. Industry, I'm at a 3.5. It's hard to justify anything higher than that, given that this is a silent film in an era where talkies were becoming the norm and the dominant film genre. But I give it that much simply because it's Chaplin. Chaplin had such impact on comedy. Chaplin had so much impact on film itself. And the fact that it made money means that the industry is not necessarily wedded to just people talking into the, looking at the screen and talking. There's some level of pantomime that's still going to be advantageous in filmmaking. For the public, it did really well for a silent film. I can't give it a complete 5. I'm going to go 4.5 because it did so well. I can't go more than that simply because it was not, the highest of box offices. But I think some people went to see it based on nostalgia for Chaplin when films were a little more simple. So that gives me a 8 overall.
So we end on the same number, but at slightly different ways. I would say that this was lauded. Like, it did not seem that there were many negative reviews at the time of this movie, from what at least we could find or what I could see. I mean, I'm willing to be shown differently, but most of the contemporaneous reviews seem to indicate that it was fairly positive among the industry grouping. But where it lacks, I guess, from the difference between a 5 and a 4 for me is ultimately that it got no awards attention, which of course goes back to what we had in our last week's discussion over the fact that comedies just don't seem to get recognized in much awards fare. Now, to be fair, they really felt that it was necessary to recognize Cimarron this year instead of City Lights. So you got to give them that.
Yeah, well, I personally thought Cimarron was funnier than City Lights without it trying to be.
Well, we'll get to discuss that next year.
Oh.
Yeah, it's the back-to-back weeks of what, in my opinion, are the 4 worst Best Picture winners of all time. We get All the King's Men, we get Cimarron, got Chariots of Fire, and you got Tom Jones. That is a 4-week stretch.
That's going to be like hell.
Yep. And everyone else gets to enjoy it with us.
Yeah.
I will be shocked if anybody signs up to do those films.
It would be funny because I have a feeling we're going to just trash them.
Oh, yeah. If you want to be a sadomasochist and come on just to trash those movies with us, you are perfectly welcome to. Maybe somebody will stick up for Chariots of Fire. I can't imagine who. So, ultimately, that lands me at a 4 for the industry portion of this. But while this is a successful movie, 17th at the domestic box office, which for the most part was like the controlling interest of cinema in that time period, I can't really go above a 4 on that side of it. So I ultimately have the same 8 you do.
Okay.
Which is weird. I would have thought that this movie would have ended up higher in the impact and significance score than it did in the legacy, but whatever. Let's move to novelty then. This is a measure of the originality of anything having to do with the film, as well as the execution on the film. 5 and 5 points apiece between those two categories for a total of 10. Would you like to go first or second here?
I'll go second.
I am a little bit torn on this. I don't think there's a whole lot that's original about this movie, although this is one area where this is now the oldest movie we've ever discussed on the history of the show. Oh, no, I take that back. We did discuss Sunrise from 1927. So this is like the second oldest. But my history and knowledge of the early days of film in like the teens and the 20s and such, when it was like really at the forefront, is so much less. And so it's hard for me to look back beyond 1931 and say, well, this was basing it off of this and it was basing it off of that. Man, I just, part of me wants to say, because the Tramp character had been around for multiple films by this point, I mean, Chaplin made a lot of films with the Tramp. That portion of it and his slapstick creation and the rest of it was not novel. And yet, he had a successful silent film in an era after where most people kind of were expecting something else. And really, they only had an appetite for something else. So that does speak to the fact that he was a bit audacious of keeping to his own artistic value. So, fuck. I guess I'm going to go with a 3. Okay. I don't feel good about it, but I'm going to go with a 3. As far as execution, midway through this movie, I would have said this was another 3. But by the end of the film, I think I'm willing to go up to a 4. So I'm going to say a 7.
Okay. So originality. Yes, it's pieces of constituted this, that the Tramp had been around for a while. The originality, though, comes in the love story that's underlying it. And the sweetness and the efforts he goes, the ability to be giving and magnanimous and generous and whatever. So I'm going to give it a little bit up further. I'm at 3.5. For the execution, it's Chaplin's best film. It's I think it is.
Again, we'll revisit this in a few weeks.
Yep. I think the direction was great. I think the editing was solid. I like the overall story. I think that there was so much that was well. I'm at a 5 for execution, so I'm at an 8.5.
So that's going to make it a 7.5 between the two of us. All right, let's move to classicness. This is having to do with whether the film has aged well or not, if it was ahead of its time, if it has a certain level of timelessness. All of these come into play. And so because this category lives in the gray, we turn to our senior nuance correspondent, Dana.
All right, start with the 6. Okay.
Why do we start with a 6?
Because that's about where it needs to be in order to allow us room. It's harder to age better or than. All right.
Okay. 6 is our baseline.
Yeah.
Because it is easier to take points off for films that have not aged well than it is to add points on. And so we started at a slightly elevated midpoint for that very reason.
We have a female character who is central to the overall script and story, although she is not a huge asset. She still is a significant player in it. They're outside of Chaplin. It plays into, at that time, which was by 1931 and post-crash, wealth was not considered as wonderful, as lauded as it had once been. So there's really nothing not classical about it, other than the fact that the humor is a little outdated. There's only so much you can do with visual as far as humor. So to that extent, I am at a 7.5.
Okay. How do I want to do this? I think there is at least a few points that you can add for the timelessness aspect of it. There's nothing societally that really makes me move this down significantly. Really, the only knock against it is that it's a silent film, which, okay. I certainly don't give up any points for the female lead in this movie. I think she did a good job, but there's nothing about that relationship that signifies to me being ahead of its time and place. It's very much a patriarchal movie where she's quite literally disabled and he has to rush in to save her. So it's kind of that old chivalry aspect that in many ways is seen as outdated. It can be also seen as endearing, but it's somewhat outdated. So I guess if you give 2 points up for timelessness and you take 2 points back for one being a silent film and the other being like it's kind of an old structure, I guess I would say I'm at a 6.
I'm actually going to go up a half a point because it's something I thought about that I'd forgotten, which is there's one African-American or black character in this film. It's one of the other prize fighters. He has a nice conversation with him, and they don't make it into the stereotype, where he's bugging eyes into the camera or talking with a heavy, on the cue cards, with the southern drawl type of things. He was just having a normal conversation with a black man in a film in 1931. I got to give it a half point for that.
Yeah, okay. Point taken. I guess I'll move to a 7. So that makes the average a 7.5. All right. Then that leaves us with rewatchability. Insert your own subjective test here, Dad.
This is a film that I would encourage people to watch. I would sit and watch it again. I would definitely put it on and let, it's a kind of film that I think I might be able to convince your mom and grandmother to watch on a Friday night in the summer after we've had pizza and your grandfather's gone to bed at 7:00. Well, I exaggerated, 7:30. Anyway, so I'm at a 6.
I hate to be the person who's like so critical, but my objective bent towards this one, towards the casual viewer, is going to naturally take me downward because even though, and I think it is aided by the fact that it's 85 minutes. And so, but it's a true 85 minutes, not like 75 minutes with 10 minutes of credits kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or even like 5 minutes of credits. Like these older movies, they start with the credits and then they kind of roll into this. And the credits aren't even really very long. So it's like a true 85-minute film. But it's really hard to sell people on silent films. It's so unusual for where we're at now, 100 years later, to try and get people to like calm their rather ADHD when it comes to movies. And the fact, like, I swear to God, you cannot watch this film if you have a phone within like 3 feet of you. You just can't. Because there's no dialogue to just sit and listen to casually. So it takes more effort. And much like a lot of the foreign films that we suggest or that we've had on, even if we appreciated them, we've knocked them down because from like an American audience, it's just harder to digest or divest into them. I think it's worth watching, but because of the hard selling points, I'm going to go with a 4. So that's going to be a 5 average between the two of us. Okay. So then that leaves us with only audience score, which there's a 92% for Google users and a 95% for Rotten Tomato users, giving us a 9.35. So to repeat the categories, we had an 8.25 for legacy, an 8 for impact and significance, a 7.5 for novelty, a 7.5 for classicness, a 5 for rewatchability, and a 9.35, giving us a grand total of 45.6, and currently placing it on our list, tied at number 146 with The Nightmare Before Christmas, in between Barry Lyndon and Pillow Talk.
Okay. Yeah.
That's how it shook out. I don't make the math. Well, I guess I kind of do, but...
You really just apply the math. You don't make it.
Well, no, we make the numbers, then that I have to do the math on, and then it adds up that way. So...
True.
In essence, I'm at least half on this episode of the math.
Okay.
But as always, if you have any commentary for us, if you thought this episode was way too short and we should have had a guest on to at least like spice it up a little bit more, and you don't care for our solo act anymore, you can write us at greatestalltimemoviepodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on our website, RonnieDuncanStudios.com/GMotePodcast, or you can reach us at Gmote Podcast on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Letterboxd, TikTok, Blue Sky, and as of today, which is the day that we're recording this, Threads.
Wow.
So yes.
Cool.
Yeah. He who must not be named told me to sign up, so I did.
Yes.
Thankfully, it doesn't give me that much more to do on a daily basis to post all of our social media content, but as our new social media maven, yeah, because that's going real well. But anyway, let's move to remaining questions on this one. I have 0.
I have 1, but it's more generic than just on this film.
Okay.
Which is easier, to get somebody to watch a foreign film with subtitles or a silent film?
Ooh. It feels like you would have to test this theory out. Like, I don't know if I can answer that one.
My thought is the foreign film, it's based on subject matter. You're going to have a much easier time getting somebody to watch It's Just an Accident than some other foreign films because of the nature of it. Because I think it is a certain aspect of that. The history of the United States and Iran is such that people in this country have a strong desire to know more about what's going on.
That's fair. So that takes us to Dana's legal corner.
Okay.
So I have one question in this. When this movie came out was January of 1931. $1,000 then has the same equivalent buying power of $20,000 and $20,380.75 today.
So
okay?
20,000 roughly.
Yeah. 20,000 and change. Okay. If you are, let's say, convicted because there's no trial in this movie of stealing $20,000, are you getting basically like 6 months in prison?
Is that all he got?
Well, it said, well, I can't remember what all the seasons were, but it basically jumped from like, I want to say winter to autumn, because it was set in January when it flashed on the calendar, and then it just said autumn. So if you assume like September or October, maybe it's 9 or 10 months, 8 months.
Yeah. How much did he actually give to her?
Well, that's the thing. Well, he took the money back from the cop. He received $1,000. The cop had it. Unless he stashed the money somewhere else, you would think that he gave her all of it. So he gave her the full $1,000.
How much was the surgery?
I have no fucking idea.
Because it was in the article. I just don't remember.
I don't remember seeing that, but
it depends. I mean, he has no priors,
that we're aware of.
If he was able to bring back or return most or a portion of the money, yeah, maybe. If it's parole, and he could go back if he reoffends, possible. My guess is at that time, $20,000, you're probably looking at 2 years normally.
Okay. That was less than I thought. I would have thought that because it would have qualified in my mind as like grand larceny, that he would be looking at like 5, but.
Well, yeah, it's, but no, they would end up settling it. There's no force, so there's no threat of violence. No gun was used. It wasn't a burglary where it was
there was a gun used, though.
The gun was not the basis of the theft. But I don't know.
But you also have to assume he's poor, so he's going to get railroaded by the DA because all he's going to be able to afford is the basic public attorney.
If that. There was no right to counsel until Gideon in 1964.
Yeah, you're fair. So maybe they just took him straight to jail.
Can't hire a lawyer, so here, you're guilty. Yeah.
Wow. That's weird to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway. All right. For more Dana legal content, you can find his non-existent TikTok series.
Yeah.
Anyway. All right. Let's move to remaining thoughts then. What are your remaining thoughts for the week?
I had mentioned the fact that you and I had watched It's Just an Accident, and I thought it was a phenomenal film. I think it was the best film of 2025.
So far, I would agree. We'll talk about it more when we get to our Oscars preview, but I think there are a lot of ways to take that final scene.
Yeah.
And in the brief discussions I've had with Voldemort, apparently my take on it is actually very interesting or different than anybody else he's had expressed before. So we'll find that out in a few weeks, because I would be shocked if it's not nominated for Best Picture tomorrow.
Yeah, it will be, especially considering the circumstances going on in Iran right now.
There are people that seem to think that it's not going to be, but I am not one of those. And I also think Panahi's going to be nominated for director.
Yeah.
We'll see. Maybe this comes out in a week and I look like an idiot. Wouldn't be the first time and it won't be the last.
Yes, when we're recording, the Oscar nominations are actually tomorrow morning.
Correct.
So I will be waiting with bated breath.
I don't know about you, but the last couple of years has been kind of a letdown for me because I've seen basically everything that's in the major or the Best Picture category. And especially the last 2 years, there's been so much overlap where like everything in editing and everything in screenplay and they basically all come from the Best Picture nominees anymore. And so if you've seen basically 15 films, you've knocked out probably 15 of the 24 categories.
Yeah, I know. I don't know when it'll be sometime this weekend. I started watching If I Had Legs, I Would Kick You. And I was watching it in my office while I was eating lunch. I got about 15 minutes in, and your mother came in and goes, "What is this?" And I told her, and she says, "Oh." And I said, "Are you interested in watching it?" "Well, yeah, I think so." "Okay."
Let's just say I've left a few strategic movies left for myself so that I still had other films I needed to see. That was one of them. No Other Choice is another one that I haven't seen. Sarah is another one that I haven't seen. So There are a few left out there in addition to the shorts, which we'll find out what's on the shorts list tomorrow, which you and I tend to enjoy a lot. I don't know. I don't feel I'm going to probably watch most of the animated films. So I don't know how much else is going to be out there.
Yeah,
I probably should
be some.
I probably should break down and watch K-pop Demon Hunters finally.
Yeah. Okay.
But outside of that, I just don't feel this like gripping need to go out and watch like Zootopia 2. Even though we're covering Zootopia in like a month.
Yeah.
So, anyway. Yeah, okay. As for mine, I don't know what it is about me sometimes that I just, for whatever reason, cannot get into a certain TV show that seems to be decently popular with some people. And it takes me like 3 or 4 tries sometimes. I was like that with Game of Thrones, where I just could not get into it after the first season when they killed the primary character. Oh, sorry, spoiler alert for a show that is so universally, like they know that spoiler already. But anyway, basically when they killed Sean Bean's character near the end of season 1, I just had such a hard time going back to it. And it took me like 2 or 3 years after that to finally get back into it. I had forced myself to watch the first 2 seasons of Slow Horses, and I just could not get into it. I could not get energized about the characters. But whatever reason, I sat down and finally started to plow through season 3, and I got into it. So I binged seasons 3, 4, and 5 in like 4 days because it's only like 6 episodes a season. But I don't know. So I guess that'll be my recommendation for the week. If you like slightly comedic, dry humor with spy thriller-esque nature to it, they're pretty short seasons. They're only 6 episodes apiece. They're all based on a decent book series. I don't know. It was somewhat enjoyable. And you get Oscar winner Gary Oldman leading the series with the second lead character being Mr. Saoirse Ronan.
Oh, I didn't know she got married.
To Jack Lowden. About
yes. Okay, now that you mentioned it, I knew they were together,
3 years
but I didn't know they got married. But yeah, didn't she have a child recently? Now that I'm thinking about it.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Because she hasn't really been in anything for a couple of years, I think.
Well, since she did that film with Kate Winslet.
No. I don't even know what that is. So.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Oh, by the way, if on that note, I'll just as a side, I'm going to be going home after this and finishing the last episode of Man on the Inside with Ted Danson, season 2. It is fun. It's a funny little pleasant show. It's well done. Mike Shore.
Sure, but yeah.
Shore created, directs, writes. It's just a nice little thing. It gives you a nice chuckle and such, especially if you are my age where you start seeing your age catching up with you.
But that looks like a good spot for this week. Thank you for listening. I do wish we could chat longer, but I'm having an old friend for dinner. Next week, for our 297th episode, we welcome in our newest celebrity guest, host and creator of 1001 by 1 and a Cinema Legacy poll contributor, Adam St. John, to discuss Invasion of the Body Snatchers from 1956, celebrating its 70th anniversary. Directed by Don Siegel, written by Daniel Mainwaring, cinematography by Ellsworth Fredericks, music by Carmen Dragon, editing by Robert S. Eisen, starring Kevin McCarthy, Dana Winter, Larry Gates, and King Donovan. You won't want to miss that one, so watch ahead of the show by searching The Real Good app to find where it's streaming for you. That's REELGOOD. Please like, follow, rate, and review, or whatever on whichever platform you have so that more can join in on our fun. You can also email the show at RonnieDuncanStudios.com or at GreatestAllTimeMoviePodcast@gmail.com, or find us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Letterboxd, TikTok, Blue Sky, or Threads at the handle @GModePodcast. The Greatest Movie of All Time is a production of Ronnie Duncan Studios. Our show is mixed, edited, and written by Thomas Duncan. Our music is thanks to Purple Planet Music. Our distributor is Captivate FM. Our technical provider is Riverside FM.